Hey everybody, today I'm going to take a look at the Focusrite Vocaster 2, which it's an interface that for some reason seems to fly under the radar with podcasters. I'll review the interface, software, and what features should make this a no-brainer pick over the more commonly used and recommended 2i2. And if you're new to the channel, welcome. I'm Jesse, and I'm a podcast editor, engineer, and coach. I use this channel to help content creators create better content by sharing my experience and what I've learned over the years. And if you're a returning viewer, thank you for watching and coming back. Now, let's get back to the video. A common question many podcasters and content creators ask is, what interface should I use? And if you've searched the Google machine for the answer, you've undoubtedly found the Focusrite 2i2 recommended, along with the Rodecaster Pro and the Zoom P4. These seem to be the only three I really see recommended to podcasters these days. A couple of years ago, Focusrite released this interface, which I believe was the first audio interface designed for podcasters and content creators, and they got some buzz initially upon release. But then for some reason that attention evaporated. Let's take a look at the specs and compare them to the 2i2. The Vocaster 2 comes in at $249, and included in the box is the Vocaster and a USB-C to USB-A cable. You get two mic inputs, while the Vocaster 1 has just one. The preamps have 70 dB of gain, and you get a frequency response of 20 Hz to 20 kHz. For connectivity, you have a stereo phone input and output, which requires a 3.5mm TRRS cable, which is not included. You also get a stereo camera output for connecting the output of the Vocaster straight into your camera. That requires a 3.5mm TRS cable, which also is not included. In addition to that, you get Bluetooth connectivity. For outputs, you get two headphone outputs, and again, the Vocaster 1, you get just one. The headphone and speaker outputs have a frequency range of 20 Hz to 20 kHz. The build quality overall is solid. The body is made of a hard plastic that feels pretty sturdy, and the knobs, they don't exhibit any of that wobbliness or just kind of slop that I feel on a lot of low-quality electronics. No, it's not a metal frame, but it feels like it's built to last. The dimensions are roughly 8 3/4 inches by 4.5 by 2, so it does take up a bit of space on your desk, but not too much. The Vocaster includes just about everything a podcaster would need for a two-person setup or for doing remote interviews. If you're someone who needs sound pads for your show, this may not be the best choice for you. A couple other features that really kind of stand out compared to a lot of other interfaces is you get two headphone ports. It includes Autogain for helping you set your gain on the mics, and it includes basic DSP in the form of compression and EQ, and it also provides loopback. I'll get into the Vocaster Hub software in a few minutes, but first there are a couple of things I want to commend Focusrite on before moving forward. They mention on their website, with Vocaster, we've taken big steps forward in reducing the impact our interfaces have on the planet. We've carefully chosen components, biodegradable and recyclable packaging, and used more than half the plastics from recycled sources. Vocaster Hub works with screen readers, allowing control of Vocaster's key features, so there are more ways to get on air than ever before. The Vocaster does come bundled with some software. You get a 6-month trial of Acast Influencer, which looks like it's podcast hosting. You get a 6-month trial of Hindenburg Pro, along with a full version of Hindenburg Lite, which is It's a stripped-down version of the original Hindenburg Pro. One thing to note is that with Hindenburg, you appear to get a trial of the old version of Hindenburg Pro, which was replaced by Hindenburg Pro version 2 last year. I was unable to install Hindenburg Lite, probably because I already have the original Hindenburg Pro installed. But I'm assuming that the Lite version will also be the old version. This is kind of disappointing, but not really surprising for Hindenburg. But it's worth noting because Hindenburg 1 is no longer being developed or supported. Now, let's talk about the Vocaster Hub software. This is where you can set up your mix. You have independent control over the volume for each input. On the top half of the window, you'll see the controls for the 2 mic channels. There's the mic level and buttons for mute, enhance, and auto gain. All of these settings can be controlled from the Vocaster itself, as well as in the software. Mute, that's pretty self-explanatory, so let's take a look at the auto gain. Like I mentioned before, this can be controlled from the front panel, but it's going to be easier for me to demonstrate using the software since I'm not fancy enough to have an overhead camera. Here, I have my Electro-Voice RE20 that I will set up using auto gain. I'll press the auto gain button and start talking for about 10 seconds. When you start this process, you'll notice that the inner ring around the large knob turns white. This is your timer. Once the white ring disappears, you're done with your 2 seconds. The Vocaster will now adjust the gain to the right settings for your voice. I haven't been able to find what spec they're using for auto gain, but I would expect something along the lines of -23 LUFS, or if they're using RMS, an average of -18 dBFS. This puts you in the kind of sweet spot for recording at 24 bits. You can always manually adjust the gain after using auto gain if for some reason it missed the mark. The main reason I'm using the RE20 for this demonstration is so we can test the preamp and see if it does indeed have enough gain for a gain-hungry mic when used on a quiet voice. Let me know in the comments if you're hearing any noise with this mic. I'm not going to apply any noise reduction, so we can truly hear how clean or noisy this mic is. I'll now switch back to the ethos for the rest of this video. Enhance gives you some presets to choose from. Let's look at the settings for each one here. As you can see, the only difference really between the presets is in the EQ. The high pass is constant at 80 Hz, and the compressor is set with a threshold of -22 dB with a 4:1 ratio, an attack time of 10 milliseconds, and a release of 30 milliseconds. On top of that, it applies a 5 dB makeup gain boost. On the EQ front, you'll see the frequencies will vary some from one preset to the next, but other than that, you don't have much control over the EQ beyond the plus or minus 6 dB adjustment you have for each band. I would have liked to have seen the ability to custom set the 3 bands and their Q in addition to the amount of boost or cut applied. If you click on the settings icon here, you have some simplified control over the compression and EQ, but it's not a lot of control. But it will be enough if you just want something you can bake into your recordings. Let's take a quick listen to each preset. I'll call out the EQ boosts and cuts for each preset. The Q value is listed in the manual, but it really isn't needed to get an idea of what's being applied, so I'll skip those settings. So here we are on the radio preset, which applies a 2.5 dB boost at 100 Hz, a 1.5 dB cut at 1000 Hz, and a 1 dB boost at 6K. Here's the clean preset, which applies a 2 dB cut at 135 and a 2 dB boost at both 2K and 7K. How does this sound? So let's move on to the next. This is the warm preset. It applies a 1 dB cut at 135, a 2 dB boost at 450, and another 1 dB cut at 2500. I would expect that boost of 450 Hz to increase muddiness on many voices, because when I'm editing, I tend to find myself cutting somewhere between 300 to 700, because that's where the muddiness lies, or maybe the boxiness. But what do I know? I'm just a podcast editor. Now we have the bright setting, which cuts 2 dB at 500 and boosts 3 dB at both 2K and 11K. As a general rule, I don't like to use EQ on things like this, and I ask clients to turn off any EQ when they record. So now I'll turn off the EQ so we can check out the compressor. Here we are with no compression. I'll now set it to a lower, kind of a lowish setting. I'm not sure how well we'll be able to hear the compression, because I don't tend to need much of it anyway, but we'll see. So I'll go ahead and move this up to a mid-level of compression to see how that sounds. One thing I do wish is that the Vocaster Hub showed a number or some way of knowing where the settings stand, because it would just make it easier to recall our settings when we're testing out different ones, and being able to return to the settings we felt sounded the best. Since I'm testing this live, it's difficult for me to have an opinion on how it sounds or if it's doing anything at all. Now, let's go to the highest setting to see how that sounds. I know with the Shure MV7, I didn't like the sound of the heavy compression, so I recommend to clients to either set it to off or low. I'm assuming it will be similar with the Vocaster, but I'll be interested to see how compressed this sounds when I'm editing. But now, I'll go ahead and turn off Enhance for the remainder of this video. Before moving on with the review, I want to do one last test. This one is comparing the sound quality to my typical recording chain. Right now, I'm on my typical recording chain, which is the Ethos into a Cranborn Audio EC1 preamp, which is routed to the line input on my Universal Audio Apollo X8. For this test, I have removed all processing from the Apollo's plugins, so we can get a true apples-to-apples comparison. Now, I'll switch over to the Vocaster 2. I have Enhance turned off, so again, we're comparing the raw sound of the preamps and conversion without any of the DSP. This is all the same take, and I have the mic split to go into both chains at the same time, so we're eliminating any possible differences that might come from mic position or just different takes. The EC1 preamp and an Apollo Solo, which is a one-channel version of my interface, would cost $1,000. I bought the Vocaster for $100. Is the audio from my typical chain 10 times better, especially when we're comparing the raw audio? Do you even hear a difference? Let me know in the comments. And now let's move on. Finishing up with the Vocaster Hub software, we'll turn our focus to the lower half, where we have the main mixer. The host and guest faders control the output level, or according to the manual, the level sent from the mic input to the show mix. It should be noted that this isn't the same thing as adjusting the input gain on the mic. This fader should be used for adjusting the volume of the mic in the overall mix. Aux controls the level from the 3.5 millimeter input from a phone or other device. Bluetooth, same thing, controls the volume from the Bluetooth device. Now, you also have 2 loopback channels. This will allow you to create up to 2 channels to route audio from your computer into your stream or interview. You'll set your computer to output all of its sound through your Vocaster's loopback 1 channel. You'll set your computer to output all of its sound through your Vocaster. This will allow you to send audio from let's say YouTube, into your call. Some programs will allow you to choose a specific audio output device. So this would be things like Zoom or other meeting apps, DAWs. These types of programs will give you this type of setting. So if I'm doing a coaching call with someone, I might want to have Hindenburg and RX set up on loopback 2 so I can control those volumes independently from the YouTube volume. The other thing that the Vocaster does is give you access to each of these channels as separate inputs into your DAW, allowing you to record each track separately. Here's a scenario where that might be useful. Let's say you're doing a reaction video with a friend and you're playing a YouTube video, or in this case, an audio track from my collection on Apple Music. You'd be able to record the audio from the source to its own track, so you can adjust its volume when you edit, as well as the volumes of you and your friend. So let's take a look at what that would look like in practice. So I'll play a song. So you should see the music indicated in the meters for loopback 1, and you'll also see it recording to track 3, which is titled Ambience in Hindenburg. So let's see what happens. And we can adjust the volume of the music. So if this was my intro, I could mix it so it's just right. And then if I wanted to fade out, I can just easily manually create that fade in real time. And as you can see, we've got my audio recorded on the Ethos track, and we've got music recorded on the Ambience track. And actually what I'm seeing is that the volume on the Ambience track is not controlled by loopback. So if we make a fade, it's not going to get recorded onto our DAW recording. So we'll have to redo any of those fades during post-production. But it makes it really nice for live streams, being able to mix music in as needed, or if you're someone that uses sound effects. I worked with a client before for podcast editing where they had me live produce their show. So the intro music, the music they had during their ads, bumpers, all of that stuff was all done live, and I would manually ride the faders and do all of that stuff in a live setting to give the guest that official live feel. And loopback allows you to do that kind of thing. But there are so many situations where having all of these different inputs available in your DAW is beneficial. This is just one of them, but being able to record each source completely independently is huge if you're doing any kind of post-production. Let me pause things here for just a moment and ask you to give this video a thumbs up if you're finding it helpful. If you know anybody who might be considering these two interfaces, feel free to share this video with them, and subscribe to the channel if you'd like to see more of my content. So let's compare the Vocaster to the 2i2, which is also made by Focusrite. The 2i2 comes in at $199. It has 69 dB of gain, it has Autogain, it has loopback, and it has a feature called Clip Safe, which I assume is some form of a DSP limiter. The biggest differences I see here are that these two interfaces are built for two completely different uses. The 2i2 is built for musicians, and it shows with some of its additional features and specs. It can record at sample rates up to 192 kilohertz, while the Vocaster is limited to 48. That's not a big deal for podcasters, but it does matter to musicians. The 2i2 also includes 2 instrument inputs and air mode with presence and harmonic drive options. Again, these features won't really matter to podcasters, just like the features of the Vocaster won't appeal to musicians. Pros and cons. Pros. The Vocaster has solid preamps and good connectivity with Bluetooth, a 3.5mm input, and a 3.5mm output for connecting to a camera. The addition of a mute button and Autogain will be useful for content creators. The build quality is good, and the included Vocaster Hub software makes it easy to create a custom mix for your content. Cons? The biggest con to me is that the bundled software includes 2 trials and a lifetime license for Hindenburg Lite, which is no longer being supported. The other con is the list price. I feel the Vocaster 2 would sell better if it were priced the same as the 2i2 or maybe even a little bit lower. For some podcasters, that $50 may be too high of a premium to pay for the additional connectivity and DSP. But I should note that as of the time of this recording, the Vocaster 2 is selling on Amazon for $131, and the Vocaster 2 Studio, which includes the Focusrite DM14V mic, HP 60V headphones, and an XLR cable, is currently selling for $179, which really is an absolute steal. I don't know about the headphones, but that mic is a solid choice for a dynamic mic. So, which one would you choose? You can't go wrong with either, but I recommend choosing the one that best suits your needs. If you record music, you're probably going to want the 2i2. It's just the better choice. You can always use a headphone splitter or headphone amp to connect a second set of headphones. If you don't record music, I don't see a compelling reason to choose the 2i2 over the Vocaster. The additional inputs and the ability to run audio from the Vocaster straight into your camera covers all of your bases as a podcaster or content creator or even a live streamer. We're seeing more interfaces and devices being created for podcasters and content creators that I do find it a little bit odd that I'm not seeing them recommended more often. I have to assume part of that is because search engines are slow to reflect newer innovations. We've had years of the 2i2 being recommended, so the algorithms keep feeding us this information because those older articles have the most traffic. But if you're someone like me who works with podcasters and content creators, it's probably in our best interest to stay current with these newer devices so we can recommend the best for our clients and their needs. In this case, I feel the Vocaster is a better choice for most podcasters, and it's a no-brainer if you can find it on sale like I did. It seems that Focusrite may have overestimated the demand for the Vocaster because they were literally blowing out the Vocaster 1s at $49 and Vocaster 2s for $99 this summer. At those prices, it was a no-brainer for me. The manufacture date listed on the bottom showed June 2022, and I bought mine brand new in June 2024. So they've probably been sitting on too many and needed to clear out some space in the warehouses. Might we see this price return during Black Friday? I don't know, but it's worth watching in case you're interested. What do you think? Did you like the presets? Does the audio sound good? Would you choose the 2i2 or the Vocaster for your needs? Let me know in the comments below. As usual, thank you for watching, and I'll talk to you next time.